It's another summer special of the British Broadcasting Century, episode 123, The Archers. Live at 75, yes, they are 3/4 of a century old, and they are on tour in a show hosted by comedian Angela Barnes. You'll hear from her this episode in our season featuring events you can go to this summer of 2026. We've given you Mitch Benn, the comedian, with Asking Elvis. He was the voice behind Steve Wright in the Afternoon's Ask Elvis. We've given you Professor John Wyver's conference, The Cultures of Early Television. I hope to see you there. Oh, and of course, we've mentioned an evening of very old radio, my touring show reaching Westbury Festival in Wiltshire and Weston-super-Mare in Somerset, and hopefully elsewhere. If you'd like it near your gaff, let me know. If you have a venue and a group, I would be delighted to join you. I'll also mention some other places you can visit this summer if you'd like to be out and about, but visiting somewhere linked with British broadcasting history. And bang up to date, we'll be looking at the latest BBC cuts, workforce and programmes, or maybe channels as well. Look like they could be on the way out. Latest we've heard is The World Tonight and the Midnight News, and there have been articles in the Radio Times asking readers, and therefore viewers and listeners, how they see the BBC going forward. And I've been asking on my own Substack as well, asking you good people on social media what it is you would cut from the BBC if you had to. We've had dozens of responses, and I'll run through a few of them this episode and put them in some sort of historical context. Sounds a bit nerdy, sounds a bit geeky, and, well, it is. We inform, educate, and entertain on The Archers live at 75 across this British broadcasting century.
Hello, this is Paul Carenza calling.
This is London Calling.
Hello. I wish I could bring you the Archers theme. I haven't got the rights for that one. So we thank our original composer, Will Farmer, for his wonderful theme. For those of you who don't stay tuned during the end credits, we thank him every episode. And you should listen to the end credits, because they change every single time. So do stick around and, see what we come up with this time. For the 123rd episode of this podcast, thank you very much for bearing with us. As a particular nod to those who've been here for some time, and maybe if you haven't reviewed us in your podcast platform of choice, I noticed we've not had actually a review for quite a long time. We had loads to begin with. Clearly, I must have been begging in the right way, and not a lot lately. So what I wanted to do, I heard this on another podcast. I'm a little bit embarrassed about it, but I thought I'd read out a few reviews, and then we'll pick a winner. I don't know what a winner even is. We'll pick a random winner, and then if you would like your review read out, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, and that would be a nice thing, wouldn't it? Because it all helps us get wider reach, more people listen, and then more people are getting behind this British Broadcasting Century project. So, I'll read out a couple of reviews this time. 3, I think, and I've not read these in advance, so forgive me if I blush as I read from Mastering Matt. He said, "Excellent podcast steeped in history." Thank you, Mastering Matt. "It's a fascinating insight into broadcasting over the years, presented in an entertaining way. We aim to please. Paul clearly has a real passion for this that comes over well and just adds to the listening enjoyment. A must for anyone with a love for radio." 5 stars. Thank you, Mastering Matt. You've nailed it. I do indeed have a real passion for this. This is not just one of those Johnny-come-lately projects that, well, I have done in the past, if I'm honest. This, of all my life writings and work and research, this is the one that sticks around. I think we'll be here for some time. So we have another review here from JPCG 1974. People put in random letters for these review names, who says, "So engaging, well researched and produced, educational, inspiring, and always funny." I take issue with that. It's not always funny. Occasionally, we aim to be a little bit. It really isn't always. This is a great example of the many qualities and talents that have come into fruition from Paul's career to date. Bravo. You're very kind. I think that was a few years ago. Maybe was I aiming to be more funny to begin with? I don't know. And finally, for this episode, we'll do more next time. History is part of who we are, but so often is approached as conveying facts from the past and nothing more, so says Radford Inn. Paul brings the history of broadcast communication to life in an entertaining and insightful way. A great listen to start the day with. 5 stars. Well, thank you. A great listen any time of day, Radford Inn, whoever you may be. Thank you if that was you. I don't even know if those people are still listening to the podcast, but they did years ago, and they kindly reviewed us. If you would like to give your review on Apple Podcast, I'm only going to say Apple Podcast because that's the one I know how to check. If there's another one you'd review somewhere, I thank you for it. But I'll check Apple Podcasts again next time, and I'll give you 3 reviews. We'll pick a winner. I'm going to pick at random the first one, Mastering Matt. If you're there, Mastering Matt, whoever you are, you can have a choice of 2 fictitious prizes from British broadcasting history. You can either have a bucket of sand from the desert island discs, under which sand I see some cables for a record player. That's handy. Or you can have a bit of kindling from the barn fire that took Grace Archer. Same night that ITV launched. That was a bit rude of them, wasn't it? But there you go. So you can have a fictitious piece of British broadcasting history memorabilia as we enjoy the Archers this time. And we enjoy your reviews very much indeed. So thank you if you are reviewing. Archers to come. Firstly, bit of feedback from last time, and then we'll also give you some latest stuff on those BBC cuts and some of your suggestions as well. Firstly, though, emails from last time. James Cooper, long-time listener to the show, Christmas history expert. If you Google why Christmas, you'll see his website of festive delights galore. We're right in the summer now, though, so maybe give it a few months. James Cooper says, "Ahoy, hoy, Paul," to give it the old greeting. I appreciate it very much. He says, "I was interested to hear the podcast," that's the last episode we did, "on early television. As my nan," he says, Kate Pierce, back then, she became Kate Game when she married my granddad, saw some of the very early EMI stuff. In the 1930s, she was a secretary at EMI, and she got to watch some of the early developments and demonstrations as one of the staff guinea pigs. Wow, that's incredible. They did use people to begin with, didn't they? You would be like, stand in front of that camera and we may accidentally set fire to you. There was at least one beard that got caught in some machinery at some point. And as we mentioned last time, Peter Eckersley himself, chief engineer, was roped in, or he roped himself in, and leapt in front of one of the very first cameras that the BBC were experimenting with in, I think it was 1928 or 9, that was. So wonderful to hear of Kate Pierce doing that in the 1930s at EMI. If you have a relative who was involved in any of this stuff, you can get in touch, paul@paulkerensa.com. Got to spell Kerensa correctly, paulkerensa.com, paul@paulkerensa.com. We also heard a while ago now from Andrew Barker, our newspaper detective, talking about what they call viewers. Like, we know now it's viewers and listeners, isn't it? We know that, we've mentioned on the podcast before, listeners in was very popular back then. Even broadcatchers, which I love that idea. You have broadcasters and broadcatchers who are broadly catching it. When television came along, they weren't viewers to begin with, but televiewers. Yes, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, that was first used in the New Times in 1939, apparently. But Andrew Barker has found evidence that it was used earlier than that, from 1936 at least, in a book called Televiewing by Ernest H. Robinson, in which it says the BBC has adopted the word televiewer to indicate those who look at televised pictures. International agreement among scientific societies, the suffix "or" indicates an instrument, and therefore we have televiewer to indicate the apparatus used for viewing television. The verb to televise is already in use for the act of sending out or transmitting television, and to teleview seems indicated as the obvious verb for the act of using a televiewer. This nomenclature has been adhered to throughout the book. And there is me attempting to pronounce the word nomenclature. I realise I've never had to say it out loud before. Nomenclature. 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 While I keep attempting that word, let's meet our special guest, shall we, this episode. So The Archers is 75 years old this year. Happy diamond anniversary, I believe it is. I've not checked in a while. I think it's that. To The Archers, and on tour, Angela Barnes, the comedian and regular on the News Quiz and other shows. She is an Archers fanatic, and she hosts this marvellous tour all around the country, all through this year. And you can see her at a theatre near you, I'm sure, and you can hear her here. So delighted to welcome to the podcast now, comedian and broadcaster as well. You may have seen her on Mock the Week, you might have heard her on the News Quiz, BBC Today, but talking about BBC Past, on tour with the Archers at 75, Angela Barnes. Thank you for joining us, Angela.
Thank you for having me, Paul. At last, we've made it.
We've made it. It's been a rocky journey, hasn't it? It's been a rocky journey. Yes, in fact, so listeners to the podcast will know I've had this stroke, and our gig, we gigged together. Like, this is the last gig I did back in normal times.
The ominous gig, as it turned out.
It was, because it was all about death and dying, and we were telling the audience, you must get powers of attorney and do your wills, and then 3 days later, the doctors were asking me, have you done powers of attorney? No, I haven't. So,
practice what you preach, Paul.
Exactly, must do. And then since then, you have started this tour. and you're underway
Yes.
with the Archers
Yes.
live at 75. So how's it? I mean, firstly, how's it going? And then we can talk about the Archers a bit as well. So yeah,
Great. I mean, we're 2 nights in, so
Right.
it's early days. But so far, it's been everything I dreamed it would be, because I'm a massive Archers obsessive. You know, this isn't just a job for me. This is a dream come true. And the first night in Manchester, we were all quite nervous because you just don't know what the audience is expecting. You know, are we going to deliver what they're expecting? But it was just... I mean, I hesitate to use the word cult, but it felt like... Everyone in that room we all belonged to something together. There was this real common passion, and all the little, and I know there were a number of people in the room, because we asked at the beginning of the show, you know, is there anyone who's been dragged here against their will? Who's never listened to the Archers? And of course there were a few partners and loved ones that have been dragged kicking and screaming along. But I think they still got something out of it. I had lovely messages from people after the show saying, I don't even listen to the Archers, but I really enjoyed it because it's fun. And the actors, you know, we've got 4 actors from the show, from the Archers in each show, and they're just brilliant storytellers. And there's 75 years worth of anecdotes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean... It's so much, and as a fan, I mean, I'm the fan with the best seat in the house. That's how I look at it.
Brilliant.
You know, so far 2 nights in, honestly, I'm still sad it's going to end.
Oh, bless you! Wow, that's great. And you got a way to go yet. We've got a way to go yet.
Another 28 dates, I think. Yeah. So yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Well, we hope, you know, anyone listening who wants to go and see it, do catch it near you and have a look online and find out. We're doing a few episodes lately on things people can go to this summer particularly. There are different events on and people doing stuff about BBC parts of BBC history but of course the great thing about the Archers is it's BBC history, but it's very much present and certainly future as well. It shows no signs of waning at all, and 75 years young. I was looking, it's over 20,000 episodes.
It is. I think it's around 22,000 now.
That's incredible.
Yeah, because we do actually in the show, we do a quiz, a sort of pub quiz thing in the second half. And I kind of say to them, okay, you've got your interval now, it's 15 minutes, and you've got 22,000 episodes to revise. So off you go. Good luck.
There must be, I was thinking, I don't know, would there be anyone alive who's heard every episode? There might be.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the questions we ask, you know, is there anyone who was there at the beginning who listened to the first episode? And we use something called Slido. It's a little audience interaction thing, so they can vote on their phones. And I think last night it was something like 5% of the audience had heard the first episode when it went out. So,
Wow.
Incredible, right? I mean, they were probably small children, but they heard it. So there are people where the Archers has been there their whole life, like me, but there's people who were there at the beginning of the Archers as well.
That's amazing. I think we worked out on the podcast a while ago, we had a Doctor Who expert who, I don't know how he worked it out, but he said that there must be no one alive who's seen every Doctor Who because there's like missing episodes and you'd have to have... But then there might have been, you never know, the obsessive who was there, you know, somehow, because it was about the same sort of time. Well, so let's briefly then, at the very start, so we go back to, it was New Year's Day, I think, 1951. What do we know about how it began? I mean, they had Dick Barton special agent. They wanted a farming version, I believe. And,
well, that's right. Apparently, there was a BBC farming conference, which sounds like a barrel of laughs, doesn't it? A BBC farming conference, and it was at this conference. It was because we were this would have been in 1950. And we're kind of 5 years post-war, still rationing, and radio is a medium for people to connect. And food was a big issue at that time, and farming. And so to disseminate information, they decided they needed something accessible that would give information about farming, but in a Dick Barton-esque sort of way. And it was at this conference that somebody said we need, and the phrase was, a farming Dick Barton. And that's where the Archers was born, really. And it started off just in the Midlands. So the first episodes were on BBC Midlands, I think, or whatever. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like local BBC radio. Yeah. And then was sort of rolled out in 1951 across the country. So, that's how it came about. And I wonder if anyone then had any idea that 75 years later, this little drama would still be a thing. Yeah,
and pretty much continuous, I think. Was it a gap of 3 weeks or something in the pandemic, or, you know?
Yeah, if
which
that, I think. They sort of, absolutely. I mean, they pretty quickly got those monologues together, and you know, that question often comes up. There's a Q&A in the show. Right. And that so far has come up both nights. You know, how was that to? And what I find really fascinating about the COVID episodes is there's a sort of sliding doors moment in Ambridge, because before the pandemic hit and lockdown came, there were scripts and storylines set up that were just abandoned.
Right.
You know, because everything had to change and things had to be rewritten. And so there's these paths that these characters would have gone down that they never did and we'll never know. And the actors know what was going to happen to their characters.
Yes, of course.
But, you know, that's in another universe.
So to what, actually it's a fair point then. To what degree then does it reflect the real world? So a real world thing happens and then we end up hearing about it on The Archers.
The Archers is really good at doing that, actually, because I think what the thing that The Archers has over TV dramas and soaps is that, for a start, because it's all audio, anything can happen, any location can happen, certainly. And things can be re-recorded really quickly if needs be. So if there is something happens that it's weird for them to ignore. So, for example, in 2001, when the foot and mouth crisis happened, because The Archers records 3 to 6 weeks in advance, they were able to do what they call topical inserts, you know, so get a couple of characters into the studio, get them to record a scene to reflect what's going on in the real world. And obviously to do that on television, you've got to get a location, you've got to get all that, but you just got to get a couple of actors in a studio. Yeah. So they're really able to react to what's going on in the world. But also in The Archers, they can really play the long game. And what I love about it is things like, for example, grief in The Archers will play out over decades. There's John Archer died in 1998. He was a beloved character, and it was a real shock to all of us when he was a young man who had an accident with his tractor, and he died. That is still having repercussions now in 2026. You know, it would have been his 50th birthday this year, and his parents, you know, they haven't forgotten it. Like in some soaps, someone dies, there's a 3-episode arc of grief, and then they've never mentioned again. You know, so it's really lovely. It can play the long game, and in 2017 the coercive control storyline.
Oh yes, of course.
Which was so powerful because there was legislation, you know, in the real world coming out about coercive control, and The Archers decided to do a storyline that ran sort of parallel with that to kind of explain what coercive control is. And it played out, as these relationships do, over a really long period. It was Rob and Helen were the characters, and Rob started as a charming man, you know, and then gradually things started to come out. And that's how, you know, these relationships, someone isn't abusive overnight. You know, these things are so slow that you don't notice them happening. And what the real world effect of that was that domestic violence charities were reporting a real upsurge in people calling them because they could see their lives being reflected and going, hang on a minute, that's the situation I'm in that I've found so hard to explain to people because from the outside you can't see it. And then what a powerful thing that is.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's able to take its time, The Archers, in a way that maybe TV dramas don't have that luxury.
So that's Angela Barnes. You'll hear more from her shortly. Her show then that well, it's not just her show, but she's hosting The Archers Live at 75. It's on tour around the country. Do go and catch it if you can. Some other things I wanted to mention that are going on this summer you could visit. Well, you'll have just missed the Radio Caroline musical written by Vicky Stone, but hopefully that will be revived somewhere else as well. Museums galore. I actually was passing the Radio Museum at Watchet in Somerset not long ago, or passing near enough anyway. Took a diversion, went along there. It is a marvellous museum. If you get a chance, anywhere near North Devon, North Somerset, Watchet is a beautiful place anyway. They've got the steam train and they've got the Radio Museum. I saw Neil there. We had a little catch up, had a wander round. We featured it earlier on this podcast and you can find a bit of us on YouTube having a little explore of the place. If you have a radio museum near you, I believe there's one in southeast London as well. There's a couple of dotted around the place, but the Watchet Radio Museum is certainly a favourite of mine. I was in Thetford not long ago, popped by the Dad's Army Museum. That's open randomly throughout the year. I've not yet been to Amberley Museum in West Sussex, but they have a couple of special days on radio communication, and I recommend if you're anywhere near there, pop by Amberley. My own show I've mentioned already, An Evening of Very Old Radio, visits Westbury Festival in Wiltshire and Weston-super-Mare. And I was going to be doing a walking tour, as I have the last couple of years, of old BBC sites and radio buildings, from Broadcasting House to Savoy Hill. Probably not going to do it this summer after all, given my medical stuff lately after the stroke. I'm doing fine, I can walk around, but it's quite a walk. We've had some heat waves, so I'm been asked to take it easy, and I think probably not doing a walking tour might be a wise idea for this year. So I don't know, I may end up doing one late summer, but I'm not planning on one thus far. Maybe late summer. We'll see how we go, medically speaking. In lieu of a walking tour, next episode on the podcast, one final episode themed on events you can experience this summer. And you can't experience the walking tour, but Broadcasting House is often where we start. We talk about it a lot. So we've got Dr. Elizabeth Darling talking about her new book, Palace of the Ether, all about Broadcasting House, and she'll give us like an audio tour of a lot of the major internal aspects of Broadcasting House. So we'll think about the radio theatre / concert hall, we'll think about the marvellous and beautiful studios. Many of them were decorated very, very differently. Nowadays, you think of a studio, they're all quite similar in your head, aren't they? But Broadcasting House, to begin with, those studios were iconic, different, and quite wonderful. So she's got lovely pictures in her book, Palace of the Ether. Recommend it. She'll join us next time on the podcast. Angela Barnes is our guest this time, and she'll be back here very, very shortly. But first of all, I wanted to dwell a little on the BBC today and the cuts that it has had going on. It's been a big feature in the latest Radio Times. I featured it recently on Substack, having asked on our social media. But I was asking, what would you cut? I mean, cuts have to happen, clearly. So The World Tonight, we've been told, is going after over half a century. Incredible. The midnight news. I listen to the midnight news. How can you cut that? Won't save a lot, will it? There's going to be some big cuts to come. So what do you cut? Big stuff. It's going to be not just major TV shows or radio shows, but channels, potentially also some genres. What should the BBC be focused on? Where do the cuts come in? So I asked around, and I've done a Substack about it. I'll put the link in the show notes, but I thought I'd feature a little bit of it here. So some suggestions from that. A big one, for example, is what moves online. So one suggestion we had from David, for example, said definitely combine BBC 4 with BBC 2. Quite a few have said that. Roger Mosey, former head of news, has been one who has publicly stated that BBC 4 should link with BBC 2, and indeed some have said that BBC 1, BBC 2 should be staying linear, because that's the difficulty, isn't it? You need something for everyone, whether or not they are connected and online. Some people aren't, of course, still. So you need to make sure that you have some traditional television for now. Surely there have been talk about switching off linear, switching off terrestrial. I think we need BBC 1 and BBC 2, but what's on that BBC 2? Mark Allinson says make more creative use of the archive on daytime television and evening radio as well to reduce costs. Yeah, radio, of course. Can we make that? There's so many great previous shows that the BBC has done. Be great to hear some of them again. Phil says keep BBC 1 and 2, CBeebies on BBC 2 morning daytime, then online including bedtime hour, bring back CBBC as a block on BBC 1 before 6 p.m. and on Saturday mornings. I don't know if it would happen. It feels like that's how it was. I'd love to see it happen, but they'll need to be appearing to move forwards anyway. Maybe some previous night's viewing. But yeah, there's so much archive, and we're seeing a lot of that on BBC 4. Maybe, though, that BBC 4 moves sort of online, as BBC 3 would. Odd that BBC 3 was moved online 2016, and then there was this big outcry. In 2020, there was talk of bringing it back as a channel with twice the budget in pursuit of this young audience, which is odd because it's digital first has been the thing, surely. And now here in 2026, 4 years later, I think it's obvious that it just has to move off being an actual channel on your DigiGuides. We are, maybe in the last 4 years, accelerating how much we are streaming online, and the iPlayer is going to be our go-to place. Maybe it already is for many of us. What I find mad as well is when they had all this archive, a lot of it has been sold off. So you want to see Blackadder, you can't watch on iPlayer. You need Now TV. If you want to watch Outnumbered, Accused, Poldark, none of that's on iPlayer. It's all on Netflix. All of this wealth of treasure, and it sort of sold it off. Couple of other thoughts that have come in, of course, paying people less. John says pay presenters less. Bill says you could start by getting rid of several layers of management. I'm sure many of us think similar. I don't know who and how, but that must happen. Wendy says get rid of the endless reality TV celebrity shows. Stop paying eye-watering wages. I think this move against celebrity as well, something I would certainly back. I know John Reith hated the idea of celebrities. This talk that actually back in the day, he was a bit worried by Peter Eckersley, that chief engineer and that first effervescent pre-BBC broadcaster, that his personality could take over, which it clearly did. So that American idea of uncles and aunts presenting children's hour under pseudonyms, which had also, I've only recently been researching some gramophone records. Back in the 1910s, 1920s, a lot of children's gramophone records didn't have the actual artist or writer's name. It was pseudonyms. We know that from Phyllis Twigg, our first radio dramatist. Her gramophone records were by Puck the Painter and Pan the Piper, and her name was not on them. Stars could not be born for that reason. And I look at today, and actually, there is this push for celebrity constantly, more than ever. Used to be game shows would have a one-off special once a year with celebrities, and now it's Ross Kemp's Celebrity Bridge of Lies more often than not, whereas actually the people I think of who moved me on television, think of The Assembly, that was on BBC axed it for some reason. ITV have saved it. The stars on that are the not celebrities, but the wonderful, compelling, real people, those with autistic diagnoses, learning difficulties, who are the interviewers. They are golden. I could not tell you, meanwhile, who was on Strictly last year. We have been flooded with celebrities to the point that it doesn't really mean much anymore. Good, real stories. It's going to be cheaper. It's also going to be more compelling if they take that leap. I don't know. Remember Maureen from driving school? Anyway, we featured her on the Substack. You can read more if you like. paulcarenza.substack.com. Link in the show notes. And I'll give you a couple more next time as well on the podcast, because this is a story that is going to rumble on. If you've got any other feedback on what should be cut to save this money at the BBC, I'm all ears. Well, one show that is certainly safe is, of course, The Archers. It's been going for longer than any other programme like it in the world. And with Angela Barnes, I listed some of those other shows on the BBC that started before it. And there aren't many. I may be wrong on this. I spend a good hour looking at this. That it's, I think, the 17th oldest BBC programme still on the air.
Is that right?
I think so, but that includes things that aren't really programmes. So things like the oldest, you could argue, is the shipping forecast. Is that a programme? It's a bulletin, you know.
It's an institution, but
it's an institution. It's a landmark, you know. And then your next one will be like the Trooping of the Colour, which is on once a year. That's not. They're not putting in the work.
Count.
That's not a thing.
75 episodes versus 22,000, I don't think so.
I mean, none of these really count in that sense. Coral Evans' once a week since 1926. You know, it's a bit better, but it's not as many as The Archers, is it?
Not 6 episodes a week.
It's not, is it? Boat race Wimbledon once a year, proms once a year. Daily service is daily, but since 1928. So they're doing a bit, 15 minutes. Yeah. Remembrance Sunday, Week of Westminster. Desert Island Discs, 1942. Woman's Hour, 46. Gardeners Question Time. Yesterday in Parliament. Any questions? And then The Archers, 1951. Wow. But well done. I mean, look at them in terms of fiction and scripted, putting the effort in and getting the cast together.
They're doing 6 episodes a week. We've got the wonderful Vanessa Nuttall is in the show, and she's the live sound effects artist for The Archers.
Brilliant.
I sort of imagined all the sounds are done in post, you know, but they don't. They still do live sound effects as they record because there simply isn't time with 6 episodes a week. And she describes it as it's a train that never stops running. The Archers, you know, it doesn't stop. Even COVID, you know, it kept going, that train. And so there isn't time to do loads of post-production stuff. So there's some sounds that are dropped in afterwards, but the majority of the stuff you hear is done by a live spot effects artist.
Wow. And
we've got Vanessa's on the live show. And honestly, I mean, I could watch her do her thing for 2 hours. It's so fascinating how she makes some of the... I won't no spoilers here. But how she makes some of the sounds that we... You know, how we know we're in the Bull pub, or how we know we're on a farm, or we know we're... Because you just take it for granted when you listen. You know where you are in Ambridge. But the way she creates that, it's magic. It really is.
You mentioned a few minutes ago as well about early in the television, the birth of television. And I have to mention, of course, Grace Archer.
I knew that was what you were
It's got to come up, hasn't it? You know, people will be going, why is not mentioned Grace Archer? So what's this, 1955? And that looks to me like, you know, it was deliberately timed to coincide with the birth of ITV.
Yeah.
You miss it, you miss it.
It was a real shocker when it happened to the audience. I think she was a beloved character, Grace Archer. And spoiler alert, she dies in a fire in 1955 at the stables. And that just happened to be the night that ITV launched. Yeah. So, what a coincidence that was.
There's no BBC Sounds then. It's like, if you chose to go and watch TV, you snooze, you lose.
You're lost. Yeah. Exactly that.
Exactly that. Yeah, brilliant. Obviously, that's before any of us were around, and some of our listeners might have even heard it. I don't know. But in terms of picking it up, then you can pick up at any time, can't you? Is that fair? Just dive in.
Yeah, don't be, when people think, well, it's 75 years to catch up on. It doesn't work
Previously
like that.
on, yeah.
Exactly. Well, in the show, if you come to the show, again, no spoiler, but I do a potted 75 years of the Archers
brilliant.
to get you up to date. So, if you come to the show and you've never listened before, don't worry, I'll get you up to date. But, I said, well, I missed the first 25 years of it, so you can catch up. It's fine. And I do think if you listen a couple of weeks and you're in, really. And if you do really want to get stuck in, there's so many, but there's an Archer's encyclopedia, there's lots of websites with the family trees on. I've got a Dutch friend who, when she first moved over here, and we became friends, and obviously I love the Archers, and she really wanted to experience what it is. And of course, not only is she hasn't got the cultural references and the language, and I mean, her English is way better than my Dutch, but still, so she found it harder to differentiate the voices and things. So she would listen to it with her laptop open with the family tree on and who everyone was, and now she's into it. So, yeah, there is a way.
Yeah, clearly. Well, for much of it, I won't ask you to do the potted history then, because people need to go and see the show. That's clearly what has to happen. So there you go. So maybe we should leave it all hanging. I've got to mention the wonderful theme, of course, and I love the fact that you that must be played, of course, and therefore there can't be many shows in the country where a live audience can gather and just hear and presumably sort of hum along. They're going to sing along with their own.
Absolutely. You have to Dumpty-Dum when you come to the show. You don't get away with it. You have to Dumpty-Dum.
It's joyous, totally joyous. It's a wonderful era.
And the show is a celebration, and it's fun. Like, we've had so many laughs, and you can get involved in the show. You can ask questions to the cast, because we have there's 2 different casts that rotate through the tour, but they're all beloved characters, and you want to ask them. And what I love about the actors in the Archers is that, particularly the ones we've got on tour with us, is they know why they're there. They're not there to talk about their career or their time at RADA. Right. They're there because of these characters, and they love their characters. They live the Archer. Ryan Kelly, who plays Jazza in the Archers, is like an encyclopedia of the Archers. In fact, come along, try and fox him with a question. You won't be able to do it. He remembers everything that's ever happened in the Archers. So they love it as well. It's not just a job to them. They really live and breathe it.
You've had cameos, of course, in the Archers. Like, was it Judi Dench was in a key episode, 10,000 or something? But
the
really, the Queen, exactly. I mean,
Queen Camilla.
Totally,
Princess Margaret, absolutely.
They're queuing up for it, But the stars really are. People love the cast, and whether it's today's cast, and we mentioned June Spencer briefly, who was in I don't know how many episodes, how many decades, but
she was there from the beginning.
It's incredible.
She was in the first episode, and she was still recording episodes when she was 103.
Gosh.
So she died in 2024. She was 105, but she was still recording episodes at 103. Isn't that incredible?
That's the dream, isn't it? That is wonderful.
Yeah.
To play a character, something like, if it's not the longest running character on the planet, it should be.
It's up there.
It's up there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fair play. Forget my questions then. Are there any good questions you get on tour that you think, oh, that's great? This is going to keep coming up or whatever?
Well, the questions I love are the ones that really put the actors on the spot. Like, we had one on the first night, which was, if you could assassinate any character, who would it be? and you see them panic a little bit, especially as on the first night, Jeremy Howe, the editor, was in. So they were a bit nervous. I
can imagine. Yeah.
And we're very quick to say, we love the actor who plays this character, but... And I think the consensus was mostly that Helen and Adam can go.
Right, okay.
On the first night, but we'll see. Yeah.
If you hear the Dumpty-Dum,
now
bang.
panicking.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Well, they said it's lovely. They say they get their script, and they sort of... Charles Collingwood tells a lovely story about getting his script. And in it said that Brian's considering buying a helicopter, and his first thought was, "Oh no, that's going to crash and I'm going to die and I'll be out of a job."
Oh no, of course you've got to think of the danger, haven't you? Totally, yeah,
Absolutely.
too right, yeah. Oh, wonderful, great. Well, the tour itself then goes. I mean, I can't even possibly list all the dates, but you might even have thought ahead this yourself: Chichester, Nottingham, Canterbury, Cambridge, Ipswich, Brighton, Truro, down in Cornwall, Portsmouth, London, all over the shop. Yeah, have a look online. Have a Google.
And we are coming to Scotland as well. I know
Scotland.
people panic that we're not, but we will be doing Edinburgh and Glasgow as well. So
oh, very good.
Do come along.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you, Angela Barnes. There you go. Wish you well on the tour. The Archers live at 75. Hurrah for the Archers! And here's to the next 75.
Thanks, Paul.
That's Angela Barnes, The Archers, live at 75. Do Google it. Find it at a theatre near you. It's bound to be coming near you because it is everywhere. Makes me think, actually, I should be contacting those theatres to see if they'd like an evening of rail radio, just in a little small studio theatre. If they find an audience for The Archers at live at 75, I think there's surely an audience there for very old radio. Let's find out. Do send us your feedback, your thoughts. If you were DG, where would you make your savings? But also any reviews as well. We'll be looking out to read a few more of those next time. Thank you for those who have reviewed on a podcast platform of your choice. And if you could share this episode and, of course, subscribe, I would be very much appreciative. The British Broadcasting Century is presented and produced by Paul Carenza. Original music is by Will Farmer. Find us on Facebook and Blue Sky. You won't find us on the BBC website because, of course, we are nothing to do with today's British Broadcasting Corporation. We're largely talking about the old British Broadcasting Company, who are occasionally leaping forward in episodes like this on The Wonderful Archers. If you really enjoyed the podcast, do support us on patreon.com/Paul Carenza. £5 a month. You get writings and videos, and you can help to keep this podcast afloat. Stay informed, educated and entertained, and join us next time for a peek inside the doors of Broadcasting House here on the British Broadcasting Century.